The burden of guilt weighed heavily on Dante Falconeri as he replayed the events that led him to this dark crossroads. The moment Sam McCall passed, Dante couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of responsibility, even though he knew deep down that he had no control over the situation. The connection between Sam's untimely death and Lulu Falconeri's miraculous awakening would forever haunt him, leaving him questioning whether he deserved any happiness with Lulu. After all, how could he ever look into her eyes again, knowing that her life might have been spared at the cost of Sam's? This internal conflict only grew more intense as he imagined what life might have been like if things had unfolded differently. Despite the deep connection he had with Lulu, Dante was plagued by the idea that perhaps he had been too quick to move on. His heart had been torn between the past and the present, leaving him in a constant state of turmoil. Would Lulu's second chance at life come with an unspoken price that he would be forced to pay? Would their reunion be tainted by the shadow of Sam's sacrifice? As Dante stood by Lulu's bedside, watching her slowly stir from her coma, his emotions were a tumultuous storm. The joy of seeing her alive was undercut by a gnawing guilt that he couldn't ignore. What if Sam had been the one to give Lulu this second chance, donating her organs to save the woman Dante once loved so deeply? The weight of that possibility made his heart ache. How could he reconcile the fact that one woman had to lose her life for another to survive? Dante feared that this guilt would prevent him from ever truly embracing the future with Lulu, no matter how much he longed to rekindle what they once had. The complexity of his emotions was overwhelming. Dante couldn't help but entertain the fantasy of a future where he and Lulu could be together again, but this dream was now tainted by the knowledge of Sam's death. Every time he envisioned Lulu waking up, and the joy of being able to finally tell her how he still felt, a wave of sorrow would wash over him. Would he ever be able to shake the feeling that he was somehow responsible for Sam's passing? The thought of her final moments, potentially believing that Dante's heart was elsewhere, tore him apart. Dante had been grappling with a different kind of pain. Sam McCall was everything he had needed in the wake of his separation from Lulu, a beacon of hope in a time of darkness. But as Sam's condition deteriorated, Dante found himself helpless, unable to prevent the inevitable. It was during this time that Tracy Quartermain, never one to hold back, decided to confront Dante in the hospital chapel. Tracy had always been a force to be reckoned with, and her words hit him like a ton of bricks, leaving him even more distraught. By the time he returned to the Quartermain mansion, Dante was a man on the edge, filled with guilt and anger. His frustrations were not just with Tracy, but with the entire situation, and most of all, with himself. Tracy's timing, as always, was impeccable in its cruelty. Dante had been trying to find solace in the chapel, a place where he hoped he could make sense of the chaos swirling around him. Instead, Tracy's harsh truths only deepened his sense of despair. He couldn't shake the feeling that everything was spiraling out of control, and that he was powerless to stop it. The anger he felt was a mixture of rage at the universe for taking Sam away, and frustration with himself for allowing things to reach this point. Just when Dante thought things couldn't get worse, the prospect of losing both women became more than just a fear. It seemed like an inevitability. While he tried to prepare himself for the finality of Sam's death, the thought of Lulu slipping away was something he had never truly accepted. Her declining health was a constant reminder of how fragile life was, and as much as he wanted to be there for her, the idea of a world without Lulu was something he couldn't bear to face. His mind kept returning to their past, the life they had built together and the child they shared. Even though he had moved on with Sam, a part of him had always clung to the hope that he and Lulu would find their way back to each other. The looming reality of Lulu's worsening condition made Dante question every decision he had made since their separation. Could he have done more to save her? Was he wrong to move on with Sam, despite knowing Lulu's condition? These thoughts tormented him, leaving him in a state of constant anxiety. The possibility of Lulu's death seemed to hang over him like a dark cloud, threatening to consume him. The realization that Sam was slipping away hit Dante harder than he could have ever anticipated. Sam had been his anchor, the one person who understood the depth of his pain, and now he was losing her too. As much as Dante had tried to deny it, the prospect of life without Sam was unbearable. She had become more than just a partner. She was his confidant, the person he relied on the most. Now, as her condition worsened, Dante found himself in a state of denial, unable to accept that he was about to lose her. The shock of her death, when it came, would shatter him, leaving him with nothing but memories and regrets. Sam's decline was a slow, agonizing process that Dante was powerless to stop. Each day, as he watched her grow weaker, the reality of her impending death became harder to ignore. He had thought he was strong enough to handle it, but the closer it came, the more he realized how unprepared he was. The thought of living without Sam filled him with a deep, all-consuming sadness. How could he go on without the one person who had helped him through so much? The tragic intertwining of these two women's fates left Dante in a state of emotional paralysis. He was losing Sam, just as he was beginning to understand how he truly felt about Lulu. The timing was cruel, almost as if the universe was playing a twisted game with his heart. As he tried to come to terms with the loss of Sam, the thought of Lulu waking up only to discover the truth was almost too much to bear. How could he face her, knowing that Sam had paid the ultimate price? The guilt would be a heavy burden to carry, and Dante feared it might be too much for him to handle. Dante's world had been turned upside down in the most devastating way. The cruel irony of the situation was not lost on him. Just as he was about to lose one love, another might be returned to him, but at what cost? The idea that Sam's death might somehow lead to Lulu's recovery was something that Dante couldn't even begin to process. It was a situation so fraught with emotional complexity that he wasn't sure he would ever find peace. Even if Lulu did wake up, could he ever truly be happy knowing what had been lost?